Hey guys, Scott here, back with After Hours Automotive. Working on my boat here today. This is my 1989 Four Winds Freedom 170, and I got several videos on this thing about all I've had to do to it in order to get it going. I bought it basically as a dud and have completely rebuilt the thing. You can look at some other videos on that, but today I came out to fire it up and kind of freshen it up for this season. Here it is, end of February in Georgia. Hopefully going to be starting to get warm here soon, and so I came out and I put the dog ears on this thing and fired it up and was just trying to let it run a little bit, and I noticed that I wasn't getting any water coming out of my exhaust, because there should be water coming down from here whenever the boat is consuming, or recycling water, and it's going to bring it in through these holes right here, and then it's going to spit it out the exhaust right there, and then if you're in drive and using the propeller, some of it will come out from inside the propeller. But like I say, I've done a lot to freshen this boat up, and so I expected to not have any issues. And when I noticed that, I thought, well, I've replaced the water pump recently, so that shouldn't be a problem. Well, come to find out, so on this thing you got, I know this is going to be terrible quality because it's so dark, but you have your shaft that drives your water pump, and then the inlet and outlet holes where the water is recycled through the water pump, which is this rubber guy here that is driven by this gear, and it runs inside this housing, which was supplied with my new water pump. It came with the rubber impeller and this gear, this housing, I apologize. And so I pulled the water pump off real quick because it was making me curious to know why I didn't have any water circulation, and this is what I found. So this metal housing here is supposed to be turned to where these open spots are in line with these intake and output ports, so that the water can circulate by the way of the water pump from one to the other. And so when I pulled the cover off the water pump housing, which is just this plastic cover here that goes over this, this piece here was smoking, and you can see the spots on this thing where it's bubbled up from the heat. And what actually got me to look in there, other than the fact that I didn't have water circulation, is I did, when this cover was on, I had water trickling out from right here, and it was just running down. So I figured maybe my gasket was bad on my water pump, and I was going to tighten the bolts up a little bit. But when I got in there, this thing was smoking and had all these bubbles coming up. So I had no choice but to pull this cover off, and I'm glad I did, especially before we got on the lake and got too far out, because this is turned in here. So this is just kind of a quick video. Just because you have a new water pump, I guess that doesn't necessarily mean, which I will say, since I put this water pump on, we ran it all last season, and then just a couple days ago we ran it, and just to get it out on the water. And actually this was after the valve job, which you can look up, Buying a Used Boat Part 1, where we did the valve job, and we took it out to test that. And obviously before I took it out to the lake, I put it on the hose, and sure enough, I had water circulation. And it's funny because we actually ran out of gas close to the dock last time we ran the boat, and it did fine all day. And I did notice at the very end of the day, it started to seem like it had a little higher temperature. It wasn't really overheating, but it definitely had a little higher temperature on it than it normally does. I think I went up maybe 10 degrees over, and this is actually right at the time we ran out of fuel. So thank God we were going in for the night. But I kind of want to attribute this, because I've been under the impression that, yes, obviously you should not run your boat out of the water without the dog ears on it, you know, without water in the system. You don't want to overheat the boat. But there have been a couple times where I was doing some testing and I didn't really want to roll the hose out and get the dog ears and do all that, because I just was, you know, in various times was testing, you know, just to see how it sounded, if the valve job went good and all that. So there were a couple times where I actually ran the boat with no water attached to it, only for 30-45 seconds. And I'm in good mind to attribute that this failure here to that, because I mean, this rubber impeller is doing quite a job. You can see this thing is melted all up, but good thing it's like a $17 part on eBay or something like that. But today I only ran it for maybe a total of, I don't know, 3 minutes, and noticed that the water wasn't coming out and my temperature gauge was okay. But I was, you know, I came out here and I didn't notice water moving, so I got into looking at this, and in that 2 to 3 minutes that I had run it with no water circulating, not because I didn't have water on it, but because of this problem here, within that 2 to 3 minutes, this whole plastic case was smoking and bubbling up and doing all that. So it generates a really good bit of heat even with only a couple minutes. So I'm definitely going to be careful now to not run the boat at all without water. And I feel like you should even, I know this is probably in an owner's manual somewhere, but you probably should even you know, let the water, turn it on, let it get some water built up in there. Still, it's using the pump to pull it up, so I guess, you know, I don't know how effective it is to get that water up to the pump if you let the hose run on it, because it does spray all out the sides. Around these ears you'll see the water shooting forward where it's not taking it in. So I'm really hoping that I don't actually have bigger issues as to why my water wasn't coming through, and then it's just overheated and turned the housing in here because it didn't have any water flow. So wish me luck that this isn't another issue, something blocked in there keeping the water from coming up. I'd like to think that maybe this is just caused by me running it a couple times without water on it for a short time. But yeah, be sure and run water on these things, because even just a couple minutes this thing will get smoldering hot. I mean, it was even hot to the touch. I mean, obviously if it's bubbling up the plastic this way, you know, it was clearly hot. But yeah, this kit came with the housing, a new backing plate, and the impeller. So I got the kit that came with everything, figuring that, you know, I might as well, and of course the gasket. But I got the kit with everything, figuring certainly, you know, I'd want to do it, get everything if possible, and make sure that I'm not going to have any issues with it. But here I am having issues with it. So if you guys have any similar stories or any questions, drop a comment. Guys, so I found the source of the problem. Whenever I have the boat out of the water, obviously we run it on Muffs to provide water flow for the boat. And so I think I found out what's caused this to melt and turn like this. Like I say, today I had hooked up the Muffs and I was just running the boat for a few minutes, really just to hear it run. And you know, got on some forums and was looking around and kind of seeing about the water flow and all that could be the issue with it. So I obviously wasn't getting water up here, and I was starting to be concerned that there may be a problem with the lower gear case, which is really an issue because you have to take that apart to get in there. Some of the guys were saying that the exhaust seal could be leaking and causing for air to get trapped in the cooling system and all this. Well, to take a look at this, these are some cheap Muffs I bought off of eBay, and it's probably like 20 bucks. And every time I've used this boat, since this is my first boat I've ever owned, and since getting the boat and all, I obviously got some Muffs to run it out of the water. Well, this is how I've always been running it whenever I was doing my testing. And come to find out, and here I am, a new boat owner, but if you see all this water pouring out of here, I figured that there was, even though there was some leak in it, there was probably still enough pressure to move the water up to the top of the outdrive. Well, come to find out, this is me running it with the Muffs with their spring-loaded deal on here, and that's not good enough, because if you do this and squeeze these muffs together, that's the water flow I was looking for. So obviously this is an amateur mistake, but I'm sure that someone else is going to have this issue. If you get down here and pull the water pump off and just hook the muffs up, and you should, according to the guys online, get, you know, a garden hose like flow coming out from the input of this water pump. Well, that's why. So I'll be sure now that I either run a ratchet strap around this or some way to keep these things nice and tight. But I'm thankful that there's not a blockage. I was trying to run air pressure back the other direction and clear it out, and then I just got the thought maybe I turn the water all the way up and come over here and squeeze these guys down tight. And sure enough, that's the water flow I was looking for. So I'm relieved. Obviously I'll need to find a new way to hold these guys tight, running it out of the water, but thankful that I don't have to pull the outstrap apart. So food for thought. See you next time.
Hard right. Gotta have Jack Daniels, always. Scott's over here cutting wood. This is our makeshift fire pit.
Bacon and eggs and biscuits on this here fantabulous fire. Alright guys, be sure and hit that like button if you like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment if there's anything you'd like to see in the near future. Thanks. See ya.